Hello and welcome to the very first episode of The Fix. If you haven't seen our first introductory bonus videos, you can go back and check them out. We talked about 10 different ways you can become a better writer. But today we're going to really get stuck into the main mission of The Fix, which is to look at copy that we've been sent, look at where it's strong, look at where it's less strong, try and take it apart a little bit, and use it as a way of exploring different ways that you can make your copy stronger. Now, I can tell you for a fact that looking at other people's work is a great way of improving your own. If you have a room full of 10 writers and you all get your work reviewed, it's not just your own the review of your own work that will improve your writing, it's everybody's reviews that are useful. And that's really what we're trying to do here at The Fix. We want, a writer's room with thousands of people in where everybody is learning from everybody else. So, Glenn, I'm going to share my screen and hope that you can see the copy we've got on the screen. Just as an aside, if you want to submit your copy to us, it could be anything from a subject line to the opening line of a LinkedIn post, a whole sales letter, a pitch, the opening slide of a presentation you're giving, anything. Send it to us at feedback@longcopymasterclass.com. We won't give your name or the name of the company that you work for unless you really want us to, but we'll keep you anonymous. And it's really just a way of us looking at your copy, and then we'll share it with everybody. So I'm going to share my screen and hope that everything works the way it should. I'm going to go, here we go. Right. So this is a piece of copy for an investment newsletter. I won't say which. I've blocked out the name of the investment newsletter in blue there on the screen. So it says, I sent this stock pick to the 30,000 subscribers of my premium service, name of service, and the headline complex says Giga Britain, a 12,000% growth market with one small cap British company at the center. Now I'm going to stop sharing my screen very quickly. Now that's just to give you a bit of background. That's obviously a newsletter or a sales letter for a financial newsletter. That's an area of the markets that I've spent my whole career in. In fact, pretty much all my experiences in financial world. Glenn does lots of different copy that has nothing to do with finance as well as finance. So that's fairly typical in terms of the format that we use. Giga Britain is obviously approaching something around, it's a play on words, I would guess, of a gigafactory. So it's to do with batteries of some sort. That would be my inference. So Glenn, let's talk about that piece of copy. You have made a big play as we've been preparing these things that you're not making any notes, you're not reading, you're not doing the homework, you're not reading the copy beforehand, but you seem to, there's a logic to that.
I'm going to be the crazy man. You can be the straight man and I'll be the wild man. No, it's a serious point in when we started this project and the more we've been thinking about it, we're both quite practical people and we genuinely, it sounds a little bit waffy, but we just want to help people get their copy better. And we've enjoyed over our careers, me and Nick worked together for probably like nearly 7 years. I don't know, the maths of these things don't really work out anymore, especially considering I'm only 21. But the thing that we always enjoyed the most was always sharing copy and talking about copy and figuring it out. But to do that, and certainly as I've learned over time, you bring baggage to it, and that's really dangerous, because if you are a copywriter reviewing anything, you don't want to say something or react something because you want to be like, oh, I know what you're trying to do there because I'm a copywriter too, or stuff, or something like that. Or if you're like thinking from a marketing point of view, so you miss that initial reaction to something. So as much as possible in this, in the fix, generally, when that copy comes in, yes, I'll have a quick look at it, but I want to try and react to it as quickly as and naturally as possible. And again, so I guess I'll give you my initial reaction, but before we do that, and hopefully we'll get some shared references as we go through these videos, and we won't have to explain them every time. But I would always say, whenever you're reviewing copy, is that the aim of the game is to make it stronger, and the fact that you've had the idea, that you've got it down on the page, you've kind of written this initial thing, that's like that's so much of the work is already done. So when people come along, like myself and Nick right now, going, oh, well, you could change this, you could do this, you could do that. It's because with fresh eyes, it's always easy to do that. Anyone could do that. If I wrote a piece of copy, you could go along and say, oh, well, what about this? What about this? Now, I inherently am saying, what about this? What if thing, because I've been trained to do so, and we want to try and do it in a constructive way. So it's always what if, it's always what do you think as the copywriter. It's your copy ultimately, so always remember that. I think it's important to do so. If you really believe in something, then you push it through, because you might be the one to see that new breakthrough that we're not seeing, or your manager might not be seeing, or someone, the business owner, might not be seeing. So do push through, but otherwise, it's always just suggestions and like what ifs for you to go away and think about. So disclaimer out of the way, this headline, I struggle with this headline because I think it hits a few fundamental copy errors. And that is A, it makes a lot of assumptions about the reader, I would say straight away. And it's quite abstract. Now, you might say, how can it be abstract? It's very specific. It's got 30,000 subscribers. It's 12,000%, all this kind of stuff. But really, I don't know what it means. My gut feeling is that I just read it and go, I don't know what Giga Britain is. I'm not that interested in what Giga Britain is, because it just sounds like a bit of a, I don't know, like a gimmick. I never like the word gimmick because I don't really understand what a gimmick is. I don't know the definition of a gimmick. Someone can perhaps write in and tell me that. But it just feels like I don't know. I know there's gigawatts, I know there's things, and as a normal person passing this in the street, if I saw the word Giga Britain, I'd go, nice one. I don't know. I just carry on passing through. So fundamentally there, I don't understand what that means. Now, that's not to say that's not an interesting idea and that the Giga Britain phrase can't be used in the headline, but as a bold, like, proclaiming headline, I don't really see what that's telling me. So naturally, I go to the other stuff to look around, and I'm not seeing much there. I'm again assuming that I know there's a percentage rise in the growth market. I'm seeing small cap British companies, so I know I'm in that area, and I know it's for a newsletter. I know there's 30,000 subscribers. I'll come to that as another problem at some point. But my fundamental thing here, and I'd be interested to see what Nick thinks, but is that it's the idea isn't jumping up to me. If I had to pivot from this headline to explaining what this was about to someone, I wouldn't be able to do that. And at the same time, do I want to do that? Can I be bothered to read on? At the moment, my honest reaction, and again, that's why I disclaim, it's like, there's stuff to work with here, but I don't know what it means. So I probably wouldn't read on. If I was a general investor, I wouldn't be, I'd give you like 5 more lines before I was kind of getting out of there.
I think there's probably 2 things I could add to that. So as someone that works in that industry, I think perhaps, that this isn't to say that a potential customer would have this, but Giga Britain, I think, is a reference to, there are, point 1, there is such a thing as a giga factory, which is a big battery thing in the desert. Now, so if you add that in, here's how I would start to think about a piece of copy like this. So it's about batteries. It's about gigafactories. It's a play on words. Perhaps that isn't obvious the outside, but that's what it is. Now, if you have a piece of copy which is like this, so it's relatively abstract and hard to understand, or hard to get an emotional hold of, because we don't have to transmit an idea fully formed in a headline. We have to compel the reader to want to read on. That's primarily what we're trying to do. So we have to make sense, but we don't have to say everything we're going to say, but we need to earn enough of the reader's interest to get us into that story. So one way of doing that, if you have something that's quite abstract, is say, can we put some people into it? People are interested in people. They're mostly interested in themselves. But if you can throw a person in there, you effectively throw that person's story in too. I can start to have a feeling about people. Now, maybe you can see where I'm going with this. The Giga Factory was built by Elon Musk in the desert of, I keep saying that, don't I? In the desert of Nevada, I think, the first ones. So if I was to follow the logic of that through and say, well, it's something to do with Elon Musk and something to do with Britain, you might say something like Elon Musk's plot for Britain, for instance. Now that may or may not be the strongest headline ever, but it takes what we have and it moves it closer to the realm that we want to be in, because it has a plot, could be plan, you know. He's a powerful individual. I have some emotional connection to him. I know he's this sort of crazy entrepreneur character. He's a kind of symbol of daring and risk taking and various other things which we don't need to get into. And he's a person. I can have an emotional response to that person. Now, if I start to bring that together, he's also a person that's done things that have changed the world. You know, he's launched PayPal, launched Tesla, taken the SpaceX team to the moon. So if we move it in that direction, we start to make it more compelling, I think. I think you still have to do a lot of work with it, but put a person in there, you put some emotion in, people are interested in people. That's always worth remembering if you've got something that's somewhat abstract. I think that's a good point. That's always worth chucking a person at a headline, isn't it?
You might be able to hear my dog going mental in the background, by the way.
No, I can't. It's fine.
Oh, can you not? He's literally.
He hates Elon Musk, though. I know that, doesn't he?
It's Elon. He's like, do not mention Elon Musk. No, I think that's a good point. And we have privy knowledge. There are some other options in this with this pack around the idea of that headline. And I think to the writer, I think that brought that Elon Musk idea in another eyebrow. What I would say as well is one of the eyebrows on the alternative was every time you see a charging cable or plug socket, you should think Giga Britain. So again, I'm still not sold myself on this Giga Britain idea. I think it's too abstract and not emotional, not interesting. It just presumes too much knowledge. But that idea where you're saying every time you see a charging cable, you think, and you're starting to talk about the actual effects of what a Giga Britain would mean, or what the implications of this kind of stuff is, about what those factories being, I assume, placed in the UK or what have you. Now you're giving me the pieces that I'll go, well, actually, okay, I can see where I might be interested in that. There's this thing going on. So again, you said the word earlier on, and I think it's worth underlining it, because I think a good way to sum up this, my hesitation with this headline is that there is no emotion, and that's the biggest problem here. Whereas when you say every time you see a charging cable, you're starting to play on my emotions of you're starting to speak to, like, oh, you know, like when you see that, you should think about this. And it's like, all right, why should I think about that? Is there something good? Is there something bad? Is there thing? So it's just bringing me into what the story might be about a bit more, rather than just that cold kind of, oh, it's going to go up 12,000%. Well, it's not even saying that. It's a 12,000% growth market, which is still a bit abstract and probably kind of more of a compliance issue than anything. But like, I think the story here is clearly, and from the different little headlines, I'm looking at them on printed here, I can see the gigafactories, I can see Elon Musk, I can see something to do with batteries, and every time you charge something or what have you, I can see it there and it's forming. But I think we've got stuck on that kind of bold headline. And when I say headline, just a bold phrase that overpowers that too much, I think, when really, I think it sounds like there's a really interesting idea that if you just told that idea a little bit more clearly, like if it just said, every time you see a charging cable or plug, you should think about what have you, and then do an actual kind of longer headline at the top of there. Or as someone's done it, Elon Musk did this, now he's doing it here. Is it Elon Musk's, as you say, UK play, or is it like could Elon Musk be bringing these gigafactories to the UK and what it means for you, kind of thing? It's just that idea. I'm very away from this at the moment. I don't feel like it's telling me a story. I feel it's just proclaiming this thing's happening. Why don't I already know about it kind of thing? But not in a kind of, oh, why don't I know about it? I need to know about it. It's just, this thing's happening. You go, all right, okay. That's backed up. And I do want to, without like going to town and like criticizing too much, because as I say, I think the idea's there. It's just not being expressed yet. But I sent this stock pic to 30,000 subscribers of my premium service. It's kind of like, so you've already sent it to 30,000 people. I know this is a big debate in copywriting generally, but if you're saying you're sending it to 30,000 people, that's kind of making it less of a secret new thing that not many people know about, because you're thinking, oh, well, 30,000 people know about it too. It's not just me. So the suspension of disbelief is kind of broken a bit there. Also, the past tense of that, I've sent this to 30,000, suggests I might already be too late. And I assume that this is a story that's playing out. It's something that's happening, that's coming. 30,000 people already know, they already invested. Don't get me wrong, that can be a good thing because it's 30,000 people are already on this, but it's just at the moment, it's dropping that in like an eyebrow for credibility, I guess. But is it credible? Is that the best way to do credibility at that stage? Is there actually, is the editor someone interesting that you might be able to pull out some credibility there? Can you borrow that credibility from mentioning Elon Musk, as you suggest, Nick? So you go, all right, well, if Elon Musk's involved, then that is a credible idea. So I just think it needs those ideas. It's like scratching. I feel as though it's just beneath these headlines at the moment. I think it's all the right things, but just not expressed in the right way.
There is another way that we could look at it. So it's kind of to develop the point that we've made so far. So I picked up on the word giga and said, well, that's abstract. So perhaps we could, if that's connected to Elon Musk, can we get him in there? Because well, Britain is another word of which that is true. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're talking about certain things, you can talk about the country. Britain's winter of discontent, or however you want to think. Certain things happen to the whole country all at once, like coronavirus or whatever it might be. But far more often, we want to just try and put the reader, the individual reading our letter, in to the idea, rather than the country in which they live. I would say in general, I would try, or I would at least always write one where that was true. So if you follow the logic of those two statements through, so we want to try and put Elon Musk in, and we want to try and put the reader in, and we have this idea knocking around about next time you charge something, next time you do this, will Elon Musk's new technology be on your street, in your home, in your town, or when will Elon Musk's new technology arrive in your home, for instance? Now that may or may not be true to the idea itself. But you can see by thinking, let's get people in there, let's get the reader in there, let's cut the 30,000 subscribers out, because the only people that are in there at the moment are these anonymous subscribers. If you can tell me a story about all the stuff Elon Musk has done to change the world, and the next thing he's planning that could change my life. So that's not a piece of copy, but it might be what I would write down if I was writing my notes. I might think, that's my idea. Elon Musk's doing something, or Elon Musk had a plan and it's going to result in a new technology in your home. I'd think, right, I can work with that. I've worked out what my idea is. I've got some emotion in there. I know I've got some interesting people in there. I've got a bit of implied story in there, and I've got the reader right at front and center. Now, I would work with that headline. Now, we're never going to come up with the perfect headline for an idea in one of these sessions, but that's how I would think about trying to fix that and get those things that we know are compelling: story, the reader, people they know about, people they have an emotional connection to, get them up there into the idea. All of a sudden you think, right, if I work at that for a couple of hours or a day, however long it takes you, something's going to pop out, isn't it? It's there for me. It's just under the surface. We've just got to get it.
It is just also, I feel like this gets pushed down. Like, I think Giga Britain or what have you, it might be that first subhead introducing Giga Britain might be where you get into the story, and you kind of, then you explain, right, this is what's happening, there's this, blah, blah. But if you just held it up and this is something we covered in the our introduction videos, but the idea of showing a partner or a normal person that headline, I pretty much guarantee that they will go, eh, kind of thing. They'll have that reaction. Whereas once you've got them emotionally interested in this idea that maybe Elon Musk's new project, or a project similar to what Elon Musk has done, and obviously without knowing the whole thing, you have to work this. I don't want to be completely impractical and suggest stuff that you can't do, because it's just not the case of the story. But getting that personal thing, getting it so that I've got a connection as the reader, it's something I'm linked to, so where my energy is coming from, where my toothbrush gets put in, all this kind of stuff, it's affecting me. There's a massive opportunity that you'll work that in some of the deck copy. Once you've done all that, then you're going to go, so let me explain, and then it's introducing Gigabrain. So the idea is not a wrong one, it's not a thing, but I think that initial reaction and showing someone and having the bravery is a stupid word, and it feels like a silly thing to talk about in writing copy kind of thing. I don't like being more than it is. It's just copy, we're trying to persuade people. But being copywriter, to ignore that kind of feeling, to go with Gigabrain, big headline, and to actually talk about the idea, express it very simply and very openly, you will probably find that it will have a better effect than just plastering the thing. At this point, you've got two reactions: either I'm going to read on, or I don't care. Whereas if there's, and I think it will lean to I don't care, whereas if you express it more and find that emotional thing, there's just more ways it's going to lean back to that, oh, well, I'll just find out a little bit more kind of thing. And I think this needs that. But I think it's around the idea, so that every time you're doing the socket, the Elon Musk, the small British company at its centre, those are the ideas. And I think it's being lost by this. Is it a pun? I always wonder when I'm using the word pun. People always like refer to that.
I think it's a schematic. It's perhaps just not the clearest one, because you know, schema, the Napoleon of crime is the one I always use. That's more the way Moriarty is described. It's an attempt at a schematic.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I would change that myself. I think from the sounds of it, I've got very little information, but from the sounds of it, I think you've got the story that will give you a really good headline. But yeah, I think going back to it, that little exercise of it started like this, or like, what is the,
it was a
tell the story.
Yeah.
Because I think when you tell the story, I think your natural explanation will probably make a stronger foundation for a headline.
Just quickly talking about bravery, I mean, it is brave to send your work in, especially to a new endeavor such as this. So thank you very much to the writer that sent that in. We're not going to give people's names away unless they expressly say to, because writing is a very personal task, and it is brave to send work in. So thank you very much to the writer who sent us that. Let's move on to the next one, which is a very different piece of work. So I'm just going to share my screen again. There we go. Now this is a very different piece of copy. Again, I've blocked out the name of the company. Now it's quite complex. I'm going to quickly summarize it. So this is an example blog post from a small business. Now the business is a seismic data business. Okay. So I'm just going to quickly read it out. Like I said at the start, you can submit your copy however you like. This is a very detailed way of submitting it, because there's a very specific challenge, which is fantastic. The first one was just a piece of copy we could review. It's all good to us. So the copy challenge says we're a small company in operation for 1.5 years. We've built a strong client base, generated several projects, and built a decent following on LinkedIn during that time. We don't have a proper website, so all of our marketing has been funneled through LinkedIn. So this is an example post which attempts to describe a recent project which is unique, where we've reprocessed some seismic data. So it's effectively what you're saying is we've just done a big project that's gone really well. It's a seismic data project. And now we want to tell people about it because that might help us generate more work. that's effectively what the LinkedIn post is there to do. So there are 3 challenges which he outlines, some of which are richer in terms of what we can talk about than others. One is, how do you make the technical details interesting to people? That's a challenge across lots of different industries. This is a particular one. If we don't get the permission to use the client's name, how do we use that in our marketing? We'll probably talk about that last, because that's a kind of pragmatic challenge. There are ways of doing it. And the final one is the one that I really want to hone in on. So we're hoping that other wind farm developers will see this post and decide they should also do this with their data. So what this company does, processes oil and gas seismic data, but in this case, it's helping not to find oil and gas, but cite wind projects in the sea. So it's quite complex, but also a really compelling kind of proposition for a company. So I'll quickly read out the beginning of the LinkedIn post, and then we'll get into it. Now that the envelopes have been sealed and signed, name of the company, which they can't say, are free to reveal how our repurposing workflows have employed a collaboration with a big company to gain enhanced understanding of ground conditions in support of a major offshore wind developer's ScotWind application. So then it gets in to tell the story. Okay, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen because there's a lot on there, and I want to kind of zoom out on some of the challenges. I might bring it back up again in a second, but I just wanted to talk briefly about this first, because there's a few different things we can do. So how do we make technical things interesting? We'll come to that in a second, but it's that final point that the person that submitted the copy talks about. We want to use this story to gain new business. So we, the company, have done work with company A. It's gone very well. Now we want to tell that story so that company B also wants to do that type of work. What I would say you need to do in a situation like this is remember a fundamental rule of copywriting, which is write to your prospect's desires. Situate your prospect at the heart of your proposition. So how would you do that? Rather than talking about what you have done with company A, say to company B, what if, I'm going to say it in copy language. You would obviously, you can adapt the register and style and tone to your own business. What if the answer to your next wind project in the North Sea lay not in X, Y, or Z, technical details, but in seismic offshore oil and gas data? So that's your claim. What if that was the answer? It goes at your customer, at your prospect. What if the secret, what if what you need, the most valuable thing that you need right now is this? Well, we just did a big project in the North Sea with a major FTSE 100 company, or however you want to describe them. You can still tell the story of what you've done, but it's now proof of a claim you're making to your prospect. Always point your copy in the direction of the person you want to respond to it, not make them the subject. Don't make them peripheral to it, and then just use what's happened in the past, the work that you've done with prior companies, as ways of proving, very compelling way in this case, of proving that that's possible. Of course it's possible. We've just done it, and it's helped this company do X, Y, and Z. Point it that way. That would be the big structural change that I would make. Glenn, I don't know if you would agree with that, or you should agree.
Yeah, no, entirely. And I think it's a very valid point. There is a lot of work that would need to be done on this post if you really wanted to see it through and get to a place where it was doing what its job was. And I agree entirely with what you've just said. I think it's a very good insight and a great suggestion, which would immediately make this stronger without getting into cliches and what have you. It is just, you've got to make it about the reader. Like I write a lot of copy, not dissimilar to this content. It has this content, it's very technical, or it wants to be very technical, and the company believe it needs to be very technical and what have you. But you've got to, so I'm going to ramble a little bit because there's a few things, but I would say that part of the problem here, to me, and I feel like I've seen it in a lot of similar copy, is that it's coming from a place where the company, quite rightly, and you could say the product owner, you could say the editor, you could say whoever the person behind the thing that you're trying to ultimately sell or persuade someone to take part in, they will believe wholeheartedly that they need to give all the technical information, that they need to talk in this certain way, that they need to make sure they say the jargon and what have you, and quaternary sediment thickness and things like this. So I'm not, don't know if that needs to be in there, but just picking out, there's so much jargon and stuff in there that they'll believe that because they believe in it. Like, that's their job, that's their company, and that's what they want to do. That's why they're the boss of the company. That's why they're the driving force behind that. They believe in it. And I believe that our job as copywriters is to help that person understand that, yes, for all of your belief in it, but that's cool, but most people aren't there yet, and you need to bring them on board with your journey so that eventually they will understand the key on why your technical stuff is the most important, all this stuff. But most readers, most people are not there. So that's always something to think about from a copywriting perspective. You've got to think, right, how do I take this and explain it in real terms, in language? And one of the points there is, how do you make less technical details boring for someone? Well, the answer is you don't talk about the technical details, or if you have to define the technical details in a way that people can relate to and understand. Now, that might be through metaphor, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. But you just need to make sure whenever you use a technical phrase that you think the audience, and I'll come to the audience in a minute, but you think the audience might not understand, or might think, oh, what's that? Or that sounds boring. You need to explain it and understand it. Now, if you find that you're explaining every other word in your piece of copy, there's nothing wrong with the copy. The whole premise of your post is wrong because you're trying to explain too much. We're talking about a post on LinkedIn here, like we're in the social media world. People aren't giving you the time of day. Like, you've got a limited amount of copy. So by loading it with all that information, you're taking away from the very fundamental point that you mentioned, Nick, at the beginning, that company X has solved the problem that company Y, company Z, and company whoever might already have. So that's a really good thing. That's really positive.
Problem
solution. By doing too much stuff, you're bogging it down, because ultimately we come back to that question, or the thing we're hoping that other wind farm developers will see this. They said that, but then they said a wider audience. Now, if I was working on this project, I'd like to go a little bit further there and just pause on that and say, who are you trying to get to? Because there's a difference between other wind farms and a wider audience. A wider audience, does that include my nana? I can't imagine it does, and I'm being pedantry, but who is that wider audience? Because if it's just you mean wind farms, then we need to speak to that prospect and understand that prospect. So I think that would be a really good exercise to do.
If I could just quickly cut in up there, that is a very good point when you're pitching for work. Now, I don't know how the economics of a business like this work, but if you sign a contract at a small company, it's going to be a fairly decent sized contract, I would imagine. It's not going to be a small bit of work. Therefore, let's say you wrote a LinkedIn piece that generated 3 meetings at the end of it, right, for a small company, and one of those meetings resulted in work, good work. That's an amazing response rate. Okay, so we don't have to write to 1,000 people there. We just have to write to the 3 to 5, never 4, the 3 to 5 people that might be in the position to make decisions around that. Now, that's not to say we want to exclude everybody else. And effectively what this person is saying is that oil and gas might hold the key to renewable energy, Britain's renewable energy future, which is a compelling statement to everybody, by the way. You just got to reduce it down to that. But we don't have to talk to a wide audience. We just have to talk to the people we want to talk to, and we want them to pick the phone up at the end of it. So I would go hyper specific here and just say, your next wind project could be better served by using repurposed oil and gas data. I don't think that's too technical, because I've reduced the audience down, and therefore they don't want to be talked down to. They don't need a metaphor, talked down to. They don't need over translation out of the technicals. So that's about an audience selection. What do we want to have happen here? Now, there will be some LinkedIn posts where you don't have that goal and you don't quite know who you're going for. You're trying to publicize something. That's fine. But the key is work out who your audience is and start with them. I'd see it time and again. I don't do tons of work with small companies. I do enough little bits on the side here and there. Companies always want to talk about themselves because they feel like that's my job. We're doing something really interesting. Okay, nobody cares about what you're doing. They care about themselves. So your job is to say, hey, prospect, what if we could do this for you? What if this problem could be solved? What if I had the answer to this? Start there and then tell them what you do. Just start with your customer. I think for small business owners, that's a pretty sound piece of advice. Start with your customer. What problem do you solve? In this case, a very clear one. Very, very clear problem you're solving. So just tell them.
I was going to say, you're laughing when it's like, it's probably going through your head. It certainly goes through my head, Nick. But like, when we do this, when we go over copy, there's a part of you, and it's ironic because when you explain it, the writer of this, or certainly the company behind it, will probably go, "Oh yeah, like it's obvious," and it is, but it's not. Not when you. And I think it's important to to think about this idea, because no matter how much you say, "Oh yeah, put the reader first," and all this kind of stuff, there is copy out there that doesn't do that. Like we could literally just open LinkedIn and
well, LinkedIn is terrible for it, by the way, and I know for a fact because I know something about this company. The person that wrote this isn't a writer; he's the owner of the business. He's trying to build. So he's looking at all the copy on LinkedIn, 90% of which is going to be absolute nonsense. I mean, it's a real
so this is the point, though. It's like when that person isn't the writer, they're busy, and it's the same for a copywriter. Whoever's doing it, you're busy. You've got all this stuff. You business and life is happening. So again, it comes back to something I'll say over and over again. It's more about having the discipline to stop, think, and ask very simple questions. So here we've really reduced it down to who is your audience, what is their problem, and how do you solve it? You've got this solution, you've figured that out. So you've done a third of the work. Now it's a case of, so ergo, the problem is, that should be pretty simple to figure out. And I think it's worth separating them, because sometimes you might have a solution, or you might think, but you don't quite know is the problem until you know who is having the problem. Because if, as I say, if it's a general audience, if they're not having that problem, maybe they are, I don't know, but they might not have launched their renewable energy business yet, so they don't know that problem. But it's just, who is that person, what is their problem, and how can you solve it? And then once you know that, flip it round, lead with the solution, say, what if this was like, sorry, you're saying, what if this is the problem? We've got the solution. You can do it that way. You could actually lead with the solution itself, saying, did you know there's a way you can do X? Yeah. And it's using this, and do it as the reveal in that flip it around that way. But yeah, either of those ways depend entirely on understanding who are you trying to get to. I think it's really important what you said about, you elaborated on the point of saying just speak to the 3 people that you need to speak to, or speak to that small thing. Copywriting has been massively influenced generally by social media and this distraction economy, where it's you think you need to get as many likes and all this kind of stuff, and that's a key indicator of how something's performing. It's of course nonsense. Like, as I say, there's not 50 million, like if 25,000 people like this post, that's not 25,000 oil and gas companies. It's just random noise. You need the 3 people who are going to make a difference to this. So it pays to remember that A, as the business owner, but B, as the copywriter, who are you speaking to? Because you're wasting a lot of your effort and a lot of your energy trying to universalize things. That said, completely seems to contradict it, but I don't think it does really. That said, when you then do identify your audience, and this was a thing somewhere in here that was saying about the language again, you need to break that language down, and it's so important that you have a logical flow of things. And I don't feel like this is a logically flowing piece, because the writer, and I know you say he's not a writer, but or she's not a writer, hasn't plotted out exactly what they want to say, because this is where I'd say, even in a small post like this, what are the points you need to make, and what are the points you need to make, because there might be some stuff here we can drop quite simply. So I would certainly review that and say what needs to go on there. From the LinkedIn post, and getting a bit into design and everything here, but it's the same with how do you persuade people. That image, is that really clear? And let's assume we're now just talking to the specific people who understand. Even so, is that a gripping image that people are going to look at and understand immediately what they see? Because LinkedIn's probably going to reduce it to that image.
It's an image, I think, of some seismic data, which again is the same thought. Who are we talking to? Wind farm executives. Put a wind turbine in there. Just make it simple for them. You don't have to overcomplicate. It's not a work of art. It's a LinkedIn post. Don't talk about what you do. Talk about what they need. They need a way of safely citing their next wind turbine. Depending on how you write it, you can either have a wind turbine or a wind turbine that's fallen over because they didn't cite it properly. I don't know what that looks like, but make it easy for them. Really easy to know this is about you, not me. This is you, your problems, and my solutions.
Functionally as well, thinking about this, and this might be going too far, what is the aim of this piece? In the sense that at the moment there's no real call to action. Find out how you can get a head start by contacting us today. In that case, yes. So you're trying to get a direct contact, and that's your call to action. I can't see that call to action because it's hidden behind January 2020 awards are just 5 months away. So I can't clearly see the call to action. But also with that there, so there's no link either, but with that there, if you are trying to get a call to action, it means that, and this, I don't know why I've got bravery in my head. I think it's because I consciously know a lot of people out there will tell you one thing, and a lot of the marketing out there today, a lot of digitally led marketing will tell you, oh, this is what works, this is what do. And you have to be a bit braver to go with what is human and what is intuition. If you are getting people to find out more, you've already dropped a lot of information on them here. You probably don't need to. If you said, here's your problem, are you struggling to find where you put your wind farms, blah, 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 and get some relatable copy, and they go, yes, we are. Then you go, we've found the solution to it. A very quick line that hints that, hey, yes, I know. You go, oh, right, yeah, they obviously do know something. Find out more here. That's what you're trying to get them through. If you're trying to get them through to a landing page, to a website or something, fine. If you're trying to get a call, maybe different, you'd word it and say, drop me a direct message or whatever. It would just mean thinking, but again, give yourself permission to understand that you don't need to do everything in that post. This reminds me of someone teaching us about websites, saying like, what is that website there to do? Does it want to get them to sign up? Does it want to do this? Does it want to do this? And follow the process. At the moment, this is a LinkedIn information dump that isn't getting its call to action clear. It doesn't quite know who it's speaking to, but it doesn't quite explain what you want them to do. If you definitely just want them to click through to the website, hide the information, like give them enough to go on and find more information, because at this point they're making a full decision based on this post. They either say not interested or yes, I'm interested, and then they're still trying to figure out what to do. Do you click on a link? Do you call them up? You're making it slightly harder for them to get in contact with you. Never do that. Make it as easy as possible. But at the moment, if you just want them to click through to somewhere else to get more information, or if you want them to contact you, this post needs to be driven to that call to action. In the last headline we looked at, we didn't speak about this because we've got such a long way down to the call to action because it's a long sales letter, but you would still need to get that flow all the way to the call to action. And that's the problem at the moment when you're saying Gig Britain, I'm not there because I'm nowhere near the call to action. Here, I'm still nowhere near it because I'm just kind of lost in this haze of information. So just think about what are you trying to get that person to do at the end as well? And that needs to be informed in the lead, in the opening of that. I think your initial thing, Nick, was spot on. Here's your problem. Here's our solution. Get in contact to find out how we can like get this together and do it, kind of thing. I don't think you need anything more in that information. And yeah, the image is a killer as well.
And by the way, reorientating it like that would solve some of the other problems that the writer highlighted. So I'll just quickly recap why that might be, and then maybe we'll wrap it up. You know, you don't have the permission to talk about your prior client. Well, don't talk about them too much and talk about your future client, and then just say, you know, we just worked with a big company in Leeds that had exactly this problem. They wanted to site wind turbines out in the North Sea. We went in, we did the data, we helped them figure it out, and they were delighted. If you want to talk about that project and how we did it, get in touch, you know, so you can make a connection like that. So all of a sudden, because your proposition was to the reader, the prior work you've done is really secondary. Your reader doesn't really care about that. And that would also help solve some of the technical language issues, because you're just telling it like a story. Hey, they had this problem, we helped them solve it. If you do want to have some technical language in there, and I get why some people do, because they want to show they're not writing to other copywriters, or indeed other writers, they're writing to other people in the industry. If you want to get some credibility points by putting some technical terms in, put them in the second half of the post, just to show, just where you're learning on your sleeve a little bit. Oh, it turned out the answer was in the whatever data, and when we did whatever, I don't know what the terms are, just drop them in. But again, they're not central to your idea. Your idea is a proposition to your reader, and then you wear your learning lightly because you've gone more directly at what they want. So I don't think
your first point there, I just pick up on about mentioning previous companies and stuff like that. What you're really doing there is saying that we've already done this with this company, or we've already done it. And that, I'm using the word already because I think already is a really powerful word. In that sentence, it's not the other company that's interesting, it's the fact that you've already done it. That's what people take away. They don't go, oh, we've done it for Adidas. It's the fact that you've already done it, kind of thing. So always think about it. It's just a really simple word, but I think it carries a lot of weight when trying to prove something that we've already done it, because 9 times out of 10 copy is a predictive thing. It's saying, oh, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this, or whatever. And to say this person's already done it is just, we all understand that. There's no technical language. It's just, oh, they've already done it. It's done. Like, I'm proven, cool. So it's just a really simple way, but that's where that's ultimately what credibility is for, really, is to say that someone already knows this. That's the thing. So I think that's an interesting word, just a thought to always bear in mind when you're talking about what you've done. You don't need to use the company names.
Right, I think we've probably spoken for long enough about both those pieces of copy. Thank you so much to both writers, both business owners, however you want to talk about yourself, for sending them in. If you want to send a revised version in, we're happy to look at second drafts. You know, we're just getting this project off the ground. So really, if you want your work reviewing, now is the time, when it's a relatively small community, relatively small group, where it's a really high chance that if you write to us with a piece of copy, we're going to review it, whether publicly or privately. It's going to get seen. So please do write in. We will do our best. I hope you've seen from that we're here to try and help. We're here to try and make you see how you can make your copy stronger. Write to us at feedback@longcopymasterclass.com. Thank you very much to everybody who wrote in. Please do send us your work. We would love to talk to you about it. For now, Glenn, let's wrap it up. It's very hot in the room that I'm in, and we've been doing this for a while now. So
yeah, it does tend to get hot in these small, tiny offices.
It's not a glamorous profession in these airless little rooms. Anyway, let's sign off there. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching, and we will see you in the next episode. Goodbye.